عن جابر بن عبد الله رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله طعام الرجل يكفي رجلين وطعام رجلين يكفي أربعة وطعام أربعة يكفي ثمانية. The hadith is in the collection of Imam Muslim, and it is narrated by Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu, who says that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the food of one person is sufficient for two, the food of two is sufficient for four, and the food of four is sufficient for 8. Now, I'm sharing this hadith with you because I saw something on Instagram that made me think of this hadith. I'll tell you why first, and then I'll tell you some takeaways from it. There's a social media account. This guy eats food, and people watch him eat. Allah Ta'ala. I'm sure there's hundreds of these accounts. But there's one guy who's a Muslim guy, and he brings this huge platter, right? And he always puts in food there, and he eats in his car. And and I wrote this like as a DM to him or as a comment, like, bro, like, you're eating the food of 5 people, and that it should be the opposite way. It should be the other way around. But he took it in jest, and he was like, no, we all share. The cameraman shares, we all share. We just do it for the clicks, right? But that aside, that's what prompted me to share this hadith with you all and think of this hadith. But the meaning is actually quite profound in this hadith. The meaning actually is that there is actually a divine barakah that is not to be quantified. You cannot quantify it. You feel it. And that is felt when there is people gathering to eat together. And the barakah is so great and so profound that what it does is that it actually multiplies the nutrition of the food. Again, you cannot qualify that and say, okay, there's 1,000 calories, now it's 2,000. You can't do that necessarily. But it would feel like a person has, 2 people are eating the food of one, and it would feel like both have consumed to their full. That's what the barakah actually entails. And the Prophet ﷺ is giving this as an example, that if there's food for 1, it's going to be enough for 2. If there's food for 2, it's enough for 4, and food for 4 is enough for 8. And that is because of the nuzul al-barakah in the ijtima'. Because when you come together, there is this blessing that is sent down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that makes makes everyone full and fills in any gaps. And then also, it is what the Prophet ﷺ is pointing at also is that you actually don't need that much food to sustain yourself, right? If you think about it, and Ramadan is a great example of this. Yes, when you have iftar and you have the first bite, maybe the first few bites, by the time you've had a few bites, you feel full already. Yes, I think all of us share that sentiment. And then if you continue eating, and I think all of us are guilty of this in one way or the other, it's largely because the taste and the pleasure of eating, not necessarily because there is an immediate need for sustenance. Yes? So what the Prophet ﷺ is trying to highlight also is that you actually as a human being don't need as much. Of course, there are circumstances where a lot of food is needed. When the Sahaba will go out for ghazawat, they would be commanded to eat to their full because they're engaging in physical exertions and really, really tough things, yes? But those situations aside, and professions similar to that aside, generally a reduction in consumption is what the Prophet ﷺ is alluding to. And to be honest, he is saying it in his time where people would not consume as much. In our times, this is multiplied by 10 because we consume far more than what we should be consuming. And this is something that we should be mindful of as Muslims, that the amount we consume really, it's not like the overconsumption is not some virtue, it's not some great thing. In fact, the opposite is a great thing. Underconsumption, having less and leaving a little bit of space in the stomach for the air, as the Prophet would say, a third for the water, a third for the food, and third for air, meaning you just don't fill yourself up to the point where you are stuffed like a turkey. Yes, that is what he is also alluding to. And the last thing here is that there is a beautiful sense of camaraderie and community, and the opposite of being self-centered. Yes, very, very self-centered. We are, you know, like everybody buys their own food, everybody has their own plate, we're all eating in like our own containers and whatnot. Yes, this is our culture, that's what we do, right? But we are also, that's because we are very, very self-centered, right? It's about the self mostly. Whereas Islam wants us to take us away from that and wants us to be in a sharing capacity and sharing mode at all times. And this hadith also is a reference to that, that we should think about the idea of sharing and being in this, in the food is a very personal thing. Sharing that is at the is like the starting point of that. So this is some benefits, and there's many more that you can extrapolate. But the reason why I was prompted to share this hadith with you was because I saw someone on Instagram eating food of 5 people, so I figured maybe it will be beneficial for all of us to reflect on this. يروي الإمام مسلم عن جابر بن عبد الله قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم طعام الرجل يكفي رجلين وطعام رجلين يكفي 4